This video will explain in detail the standard in which every residential chain link fence is built here at Seegars Fence Company. Follow these procedures to produce a chain link fence that is both pleasing to the eye and secure. Tool list: stakes and nylon string, sledgehammer, 100-foot measuring tape, 25-foot measuring tape, marking paint, post hole diggers, general with 6-inch auger bit, rock bar, torpedo level, concrete hardener, wheelbarrow, shovel, pliers, bolt cutters, 1-ton come-along, socket wrench with 1/2-inch and 9/16-inch deep sockets, hacksaw, 2-pound hammer, and hard-tooth rake. Personal protective equipment needed: gloves, safety glasses, earplugs, face mask. Let's get started. Upon arrival at the job site, verify that all underground public utilities have been marked. Look for color-coded paint or flags. Also, ask your project manager or customer for any potential unmarked private utilities. Remember, we are responsible for damage to any marked utilities if they are properly marked and within the tolerance zone. If you do not see any underground marks, please notify your project manager to confirm the location has been located. Next, verify that all property corners have been marked and visible if your fence will be located near any property line. If the fence line is near a property line, lay out your fence so that the finished fence is 6 inches inside the property line. Make sure that all ends, corners, and gates have been marked. For gates, make sure you know the hinge side and the direction of the swing or slide. When possible, gates should be located on flat areas. Be aware of pool codes and other ordinances and build the fence accordingly. If you have any questions, please ask your estimator for guidance. Confirm the customer's preference for dealing with uneven terrain. In some cases, customers will request the fence to remain flat across the top, while others may want the fence to follow the contour of the ground. See this chart for the various methods of installing fence on uneven ground. The customer must give us their preference. A. Illustrates a fence installed following a graded slope, racking. B. Illustrates a fence not following the grade. This is when the customer requires straight across the top on a grade slope. C. Illustrates stair-stepping the panels. D. Illustrates following the grade with grubbing, which would provide a straight top and require portions of the fence to be buried. At this time, note if there have been any change orders. You must fill out a change order form before performing any task that was not originally provided to you by your project manager. Verify where you can park your truck on the site. Driveway, yard, street. Is there access to the back of the property? For each fence line, drive steel stakes approximately 2 feet past each fence end corner and pull a taut string from stake to stake. Generally, the string should be positioned to align with the outside of your posts when properly installed. If the fence line follows a property line, pull your string past each property iron to ensure that the finished fence is 6 inches inside the property line. Where it is necessary to square your corners, utilize the 3, 4, 5 method shown here, or 6, 8, 10, for better accuracy on longer lines. Go ahead and mark the location for each post beginning with the end, corner, and gate posts per fence line. Always lay out line post spacings not to exceed a 10-foot span. On short lines and front-facing lines, equalize the line post spacing for aesthetics. For longer fence lines, space line posts at 10 feet on center until your last 4 or 5 sections. Equalize your line post spacing over these last 4 or 5 sections of each line. Always try to set gate openings for standard width gates. Standard residential gates are 4, 5, and 6-foot wide frames. You will need to add in the adjustment for your hardware when setting your opening. Typical residential hardware is 1 3/4 of an inch for the hinge and 1 7/8 of an inch for the latch. We also typically add 1/8 of an inch of play. Using manual post hole diggers, create a starting point for your auger that will allow for each post to be centered in the post hole and plumb to your string. Dig all holes using a powered auger, either a 2-man general or a 1-man little beaver. Residential chain link line posts are set in 18-inch deep by 6-inch diameter concrete footings, and the terminal posts are set in 24-inch deep by 8-inch deep diameter concrete footings. Once the holes have been dug, clean out each hole with manual post hole diggers. Now mark and place the appropriate posts in the holes. We mark terminal posts from the top of the post to ground level the same height as the fabric dimension. In other words, 48 inches for 48 inches of fabric. We mark line posts from the top of the post to ground level 3 inches less than terminals. In other words, 45 inches for 48 inches of fabric, 57 inches for 60 inches of fabric, and so on. This allows for loop caps and top rail. These markings will allow for the fabric to be on the ground and a minimal amount of terminal post extending past the finished fence. As discussed previously, in some cases, customers will request that fabric be grubbed into the ground. Adjust post ground level marks accordingly. We also use terminals 3 inches from the top to use a peep mark. When setting gate posts, normally set the post on the highest ground elevation first, making sure that the gate will be able to swing in the desired direction. If the ground is not level, set the remaining gate post using a string level so that the posts are level at the top. Once all posts are placed in holes, begin aligning and setting your posts. Start with the terminal post by plumbing it to your string and then tapping it down to your ground level mark. Tapping a post to your ground level mark should set the post in place for stability for the remaining installing activities. Make sure the hole depths allow for tapping your posts an inch or two. Next, go to your first marked line post and repeat the process. Plumb them to your string, then peep them so that they align at the top from the top of your set line post to the 3-inch peep mark on your set terminal. Once all posts are set in this manner, you are ready to begin mixing concrete for your post footings. We use 80-pound bags of pre-mixed Quikrete concrete. You can mix this concrete successfully by either hand or machine. For smaller projects, hand mixing is often the best method. When mixing concrete, always wear safety gloves, eye protection, and a respirator. Hand mixing can be done in a wheelbarrow with a shovel or hoe. Empty the mix into the wheelbarrow. Then form a depression in the middle of the mix. Pour water into the depression using your shovel or hoe. Gradually work in the water into the mix. If needed, add water. You want to work the mix until it reaches a uniform and workable consistence. If needed, now is the best time to add the concrete accelerator. Shake in the recommended amount listed on the bucket and mix until you have a uniform and workable consistence. Fill your holes as completely as possible so as not to interfere with the bottom of your fabric when installed. To set your posts plumb, be sure to use a torpedo level. Check the front and back and side to side for accuracy. Once your concrete has cured, install your fence framework. Framework usually consists of top rail and sometimes a bottom tension wire, plus associated parts and fittings. First, install your loop caps. Make sure the offset is facing the fabric side of the fence. Install rail ends with top rail and end bands with carriage bolts. Note rail ends are offset so you can level your top rail at corners by flipping them over. All bolts installed on chain link fences should be installed with the nuts on the inside of the fence for security. Insert top rail through the loop caps beginning with the plain end. Make sure the top rail is completely seated into the rail end and that the rail runs into the terminal post level. Continue to join top rail continuously by seating the plain end over the swedged end until you reach your next terminal post. Lay the top rail past your terminal and mark it at the back end of the rail end. Using a hacksaw or bandsaw, cut the mark on your top rail. The top rail should fit snugly into your rail end. The cut needs to be precise so that your terminal post remains plumb when you install the fabric. Go around the fence and repeat this process for each line. Visually inspect the appearance of your installed top rail and adjust as needed for proper contours and elevation before going to the next step. Make sure all bolts and end bands have been tightened. If your fence gets bottom tension wire, install it now. Install an end band loosely approximately 6 inches above the ground at each terminal. Securely wrap the end of your tension wire around the bolt at the end band, wrapping it over itself. Then roll out the tension wire to your next terminal post. Using a tensioning tool, stretch the tension wire and attach it to the terminal so that when the tensioning tool is removed, the tension wire remains tight. When the fabric is installed, you will raise or lower the positioning of the tension wire so that it can be attached to the bottom diamond of your fabric using hog rings. Once you have completed installing your framework, it is now time to begin hanging your chain link fabric. Gather and place your tension bands and tension bars at each terminal. Roll out your fabric and join rolls as necessary to cover the span of your fence line. Generally, make your first connections at buildings and work away from them. Stand at the fabric, placing a temporary tie to suspend your fabric at the correct height near your terminal post, and then install your tension bar and bands loosely to your terminal. One thing that distinguishes Seegars from most other fence companies is that we use one tension band and one tie per foot of fabric to attach our fabric to posts. Once you have hooked the fabric up to the first terminal, it is now time to stretch the wire. Select your fabric stretching tool and tension the fabric so that when you remove your stretching tool, the fabric remains properly tensioned. Properly tensioned fabric is fabric that has been tensioned to the point just before the fabric diamond gets deformed. Repeat this process until all fabric has been stretched and connected to the terminals. On residential jobs, we do not like to stretch more than 100 feet at a time. Stretching more than 100 feet at a time can result in some fabric being stretched unevenly. When stretching long lines, you will need to install some temporary ties to the top rail and line posts to hold it stationary. Now that all of the fabric has been stretched, it is time to install your ties. Fence ties are placed 24 inches on center along the top rail and 12 inches on center on line posts. When tying top rail, make sure that the fabric is a half a diamond above the rail. Using your pliers, grab the end hook and pull up while pulling the tie down and around the top rail. Wrap your tie around the fabric as far as you can. Then, grab the loose end with your pliers and twist the tie all the way around the fabric. It is important to note that both ends of the tie wrap around the fabric 360 degrees. Repeat this process for the line posts, beginning 6 inches below the rail. For fences with bottom tension wire, make sure that the bottom tie is placed below the tension wire. Once all ties are installed, hog ring the tension wire to your fabric equally, placing hog rings at a maximum of 24 inches on center. Now, adjust tension bands as needed for appearance and tighten all nuts and bolts. Rake all disturbed dirt from digging and/or grubbing and clean up any waste or unused materials. Residential gates are normally installed using standard residential male and female hinges. Residential hinges are designed to be installed in a direct line with the gate and to open both directions at least 90 degrees. To install a residential fate leaf, first install your bottom male hinge approximately 6 inches below your top rail. Next, stand your gate leaf in the opening and install your female hinges loosely to your gate frame. Make sure female hinges will align with your male hinges and allow for up and down adjustments and about 3 inches ground clearance. Lift your gate leaf up to your desired height, ideally so that the top rail of the gate frame aligns with top rail of the fence. Slide bottom female hinge onto male hinge and tighten. Repeat for the top female hinge. Adjust for height and plumb if necessary, and swing through inside and outside for operational clearance. Repeat for second leaf if a double drive, add a fork clamp, and fork to the gate frame. If a bobble drive, you will need to add 2 drop rod guides and a drop rod. Be sure to install a drop rod keeper as well. This is done by driving a 1-foot piece of 1 3/8 inch top rail into the ground halfway. Pull it out, knock the dirt out, then reinstalling the pipe until it is level with the ground. Once all adjustments have been made, it's time to put our stamp of approval on it, our fence sign. Our sign symbolizes the project is complete and meets our standard of quality. Be sure to hang the sign in a visible location on the fence. The final step to completing the project is to complete the post-job inspection checklist. The foreman will walk the job to inspect quality and to ensure we've left the site better than when we found it. While the foreman is completing the checklist, the helper will blow the driveway and front sidewalk. Both the checklist and blowing the driveway are steps we complete on every project to ensure we've done these 3 things. A. Exceed our customers' expectations for this project. B. Provides a completed project that not only reflects well on your crew, but ensures you not having to return to the job for a costly callback. C. Creates a SFC fan for life. The foreman should sign the checklist once it's completed and leave the original with the customer, and bring the yellow copy back to the office to file with the job. We hope you now have a good basic knowledge of how to install a residential chain link fence. Please review this training segment as often as needed.